Policymakers are talking excitedly about harnessing the demographic dividend for economic growth in their nations. With so much positive development underway, such as increases in education, improvements in health, and reduced poverty, many people believe that accelerated economic gains are right around the corner. But with almost 2 out of 3 Africans still living on less than $2 per day, much remains to be done. The demographic dividend is the accelerated economic growth that can happen as the population age structure changes, together with strategic investments in health, education, economic policy, and governance. But by no means is a demographic dividend automatic. The starting point is the population structure and how many dependent children there are in relation to the older working age population. As the number of births each year declines, the young dependent population grows smaller in relation to the working age population. With more workers and fewer young people to support, a country has a window of opportunity for accelerated economic growth known as the demographic dividend. Let's take a closer look at changing population structures in 2 countries, Thailand and Rwanda. We are going to start with Thailand's population pyramid in 1960. Each layer of this diagram is an age group, and the width of each layer represents the proportion of the population in that age group. It looks like a pyramid because when couples have many children, more people are added each year in the younger age groups at the base of the pyramid. In 1960, more than 40% of Thailand's population was under the age of 15, and women had an average of 6 children. During the 1960s and the decades that followed, mortality rates declined, desire for smaller families increased, and investments in family planning enabled rapid declines in fertility. By the 1990s, women were having an average of 2 children each, and as a result, population growth slowed. By 2010, Thailand's population was larger, and the age structure was transformed with a smaller population of young people. This change in the age structure helped accelerate economic growth. Today, Thailand's population is dominated by working-age adults who will be part of a productive labor force for many years. Let's now turn to Rwanda, a country that has made great progress over the last decade in improving health, lowering fertility, and increasing economic growth. Like much of Africa today, Rwanda's age structure is young, with 40% of the population under the age of 15 and an average of 4 to 5 children per woman. Even with Rwanda's progress, the age structure will stay young for several decades. In 2030, if fertility continues to decline to close to 3 children per woman, 35% of Rwanda's population will be under the age of 15, a higher percentage than in any country, including Thailand, that has realized a demographic dividend. In Rwanda and in many African countries that have not made similar progress, getting from here to here requires 3 key investments. First, improve child survival. In many African countries, more than 1 of every 10 children dies before they turn 5. Improving child health services allows more children to survive and leads to couples desiring smaller families. Second, space births and prevent unintended pregnancies. Currently, more than 50% of African women who don't want to become pregnant are not using a modern method of contraception. Increased investments in family planning will prevent unintended pregnancies, leading to fewer births per woman. Third, Educate girls. Throughout Africa, only 1 out of 3 girls of secondary school age is enrolled in school. But when girls stay in school, particularly through secondary level, they are more likely to delay early marriage and childbearing and have healthier families. Together, these investments lead to lower fertility and mortality and enable the population structure to change, opening a window of opportunity for accelerated economic growth. We can see how declining fertility is related to economic growth in countries around the world on our trendalizer graph. On the left axis, we have the average number of births per woman, which we call the fertility rate, going from 0 up to about 8. On the bottom, we have the gross national income, or GNI per person, ranging from 0 over to about $40,000. This is standardized for what a dollar can buy today in each country. The color of each bubble indicates the region. Starting with the red, we have East Asia and the Pacific. Orange is Central Asia and Europe. Yellow is for North and South America. Green is the Middle East. Light blue is for South Asia. And the dark blue is for Africa. The size of each bubble represents the population size of that country. So, bigger bubbles have bigger populations. The year is 1980, and through the middle you can see a trend. As the average births per woman declines, the income per person rises. But we see that the dark blue African countries are clustered toward the back of this trend, with higher levels of fertility and lower levels of income. Let's look at a few of these countries. In 1980, fertility in these countries ranged between about 5 and 8 children per woman. Income was between $200 and $2,000 per person. Although we are only focusing on a few countries, this represents the range of the majority of African countries in terms of fertility and income in 1980. Let's bring back the rest of the countries and see what has happened since 1980. You can see the trend over time, that countries are lowering fertility as they move down on the graph, and at the same time, income per person is increasing as they move toward the right. When we come to 2010, the world is a very different place. We see that the African countries have made a lot of progress, though many are still clustered toward the back of this pack. But a few African countries have made strong progress in both lowering fertility and increasing income per capita. So let's go back and look at 2 of those, Botswana and Tunisia, to see what happened over time. In 1980 in Botswana, women had an average of 6 children each, and the income per person was almost $1,600. In Tunisia, fertility was slightly lower, just below 6 children per woman, and income was slightly higher, almost $1,900 per person. Let's see how things have changed. You see, income increased right away in Botswana, and although there are some bumps along the way, fertility is falling very rapidly in both countries. Although Botswana's rich natural resources have enabled economic growth, it is Botswana's sound economic policies and social priorities that have led to gains for development, and the country is internationally recognized for good governance and low corruption. Tunisia was one of the first countries in Africa to adopt a policy to reduce fertility in order to accelerate social and economic development. Both Botswana and Tunisia have long prioritized education for both boys and girls and have steadily invested in access to healthcare. Comparing today with where these countries started in 1980, we see that families have 2 or 3 fewer children. Income has increased, such that families in Tunisia have an average of 5 times the purchasing power, while in Botswana, families have 9 times the purchasing power compared to 30 years ago. These dramatic changes at the family level represent significant growth and development for the entire country. Learning from the successes of countries like Tunisia and Botswana, we can see a pattern of investments which are necessary to harnessing the demographic dividend. Although lowering fertility and changing the population structure is the necessary first step, investments in health, education, economic policies, and good governance allow the changing age structure to be transformed into accelerated economic growth. A healthy population contributes directly to higher economic growth and poverty reduction. Improving children's health, such as through immunization and nutrition programs, sets the stage for healthy adulthood. Ensuring that children have adequate nutrition from pregnancy through age 2 can have a profound impact on their ability to grow, learn, participate in the workforce, and rise out of poverty. Yet, 1 in 5 children in Africa is moderately or severely underweight. As children become adolescents, ensuring continued access to health services, including reproductive health and family planning services, helps them to delay childbearing until they are ready. It will also help them avoid HIV and sexually transmitted diseases, enabling youth to stay in school and transition to healthy, productive adults. Promoting healthy lifestyles keeps adults productive and participating in the workforce and economic growth of the country. At the same time, investments in education are critical to seizing the opportunity of a healthy workforce. Investments in schooling and expansion of secondary education will ensure that a country has a skilled workforce for future economic growth. Right now, many countries struggle to provide quality primary schooling. But as a population growth slows, many African countries will have more resources per child for education. Governments must seize this opportunity by expanding access to education. Educational systems must also be responsive to the labor needs of an expanding economy. These investments in education can have quick returns for individuals and families. Each year of schooling is associated with an increase in wages of up to 10% or more. And improving the education of young people today means a higher quality workforce in the future. With additional training and skills, young people will be equipped to compete in the global economy. Yet, dramatic variation in secondary school enrollment across Africa suggests uneven opportunities for achieving a dividend. In West Africa, only 27% of secondary school-age girls and 37% of boys are enrolled in school. But in Southern Africa, 92% of girls and 88% of boys are enrolled. Improving secondary school enrollment, especially for girls, will accelerate progress towards the dividend. But to fully realize the benefits of the investments in health and education, they must be accompanied by supportive economic policies that create jobs for today's large population of youth and harness the power of the age structure transformation. With fewer children and higher levels of education, more women can transition to paid and higher skilled jobs. Sound economic policies will increase meaningful employment by fostering growth in the skilled workforce. Governments must shift economic priorities into sectors that can absorb today's youth, such as manufacturing, service, and technology. Governments must ensure that women and men have equal opportunity and skills for the workforce. Sound economic policies also promote free trade and open markets, attract foreign and domestic investment, and help grow the private sector. And there must be attention to fostering personal savings and expanding access to economic opportunities for rural and poor communities through microfinance and targeted programs. Finally, good governance practices, including rule of law, stability and security, efficiency and accountability, along with strong and transparent institutions, are essential to harnessing the demographic dividend. Indeed, good governance is a vital ingredient that turns the wheels of progress and engages the power of the demographic dividend. Each of these areas of investment contributes to transforming the possibility of a demographic dividend into the reality of accelerated economic growth. It starts with a change in the population age structure, which hinges on lowering fertility through access to voluntary family planning, improved child health, and education. Investments in health services and education foster a healthy, productive, and skilled workforce. Economic policies foster job growth, trade, and foreign investment, while good governance builds civic participation and confidence in the government and social institutions. Each sector is important for economic development, but no sector alone can transfer the momentum of the age structure transformation into the economic growth of a dividend. All of the gears must work together. As each component fits into place, the gears begin to turn and engage, pushing the nation forward to the promise of accelerated development and prosperity by harnessing a demographic dividend.